Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We will be covering England getting stunned by Greece as they lose at Wembley against Greece. We'll discuss today's CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers as well. Interesting games going on there. We'll discuss today's UEFA's Nations League action. We'll discuss Graham Souness's criticism of Ange Postecoglou. And make sure you stick around for the end of the show. I'll be giving you my reaction to some of the top headlines going on in the soccer world. If you have a question during the show, we want to hear it. Your input is a big part of what makes this show successful, and we thrive on your energies and insights. Whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. And now if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Use the super chat feature. Just click the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you can always go to the gsmcpodcast.net to tip, donate, and leave a comment or question there. We really couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you as part of our community. We do have to start off with a reaction to the England national team getting stunned by the Greek national team as they lose to Greece 2-1 in the Nations League. It was a England team now being managed by Lee Carsley, who's there right now on an interim basis. Lee Carsley is. It was an interesting team he put out. Getting on, really playing only one natural midfielder in Declan Rice, getting the likes of Bellingham, Palmer, Gordon, Saka, Foden, all on the pitch. A very open-ended team, also playing Trent Alexander-Arnold and Rico Lewis as fullbacks. Very attack-minded thinking team. And, this game almost showed why, and there's no, I'm not here defending Southgate and his tactic. He made huge mistakes in his run as English manager. But this game proved why Gareth Southgate had a little bit of more pragmatic approach with these players, because, well, they were too easy to play against England. Once England lost the ball, there was so much space for the Greek players to take advantage of, and they just looked entirely way too open and not a strong unit. Pavlidis took the lead for Greek in the 49th minute. Finally, the equalizer came late in the game, 87th minute, but in stoppage time, Pavlidis gets the winner, and it was honestly what Greece deserved. They created a lot of decent opportunities with limited possession, and they took advantage of a lot of space, and they played with a little bit of quality, Greece too. I was impressed with the football that they played, how they were able to get out and counter attack moments, take advantage of the spaces given. I thought England looked woeful on the ball, lacked that cutting edge when they lost the ball entirely too open, which makes sense when you're playing. Look, I don't mind playing Trent Alexander-Arnold and Rico Lewis as fullbacks. Yes, you want to go with the attack-minded approach, but when you put Saka, Foden, Bellingham, Gordon, Cole Palmer, that when you have that group of 5 players and the only midfielder with any defensive bone in him is Declan Rice, well, you'll be entirely too easy to play against. And this was Greece, a team, that not the greatest national team Greece is. Imagine you're going up with the likes of imagine you're going up the likes of France, a Spain, even Italy, a team with some quality. It would be way too easy to play against England. Would be the way that they approach it now, and it's almost like Lee Carsley. He's trying to appeal to the fans, and that's something Southgate never really valued whenever he was deciding his tactics, his lineups, and all that. He never really valued, he never really tried to please the fans. I think Lee Carsley was trying to please the fans with the approach, because this was entirely way too open. And it's fine being open and wanting to play, or not. It's not fine being open. Obviously, it's never fine being open. But it's fine wanting to play an attacking way of going about it. But you have to protect yourself from being as open as England were, with a good, defensive stability about it. And there was no stability in that. Too much space was given. When England lost the ball, they looked like they were in danger to get countered on every time England lost the ball. England, this is a loss, but it's not the worst thing in the world. England, they got relegated in the last Nations League, so they're now find themselves in Group B, which nobody really talks about, quite frankly, because Nations League doesn't really matter. But England now find themselves in Group B, in League B. So the group, even with this loss, the group is going to be entirely manageable for them to win it, with Ireland, who are not really good at all, Finland, who are not good at all, and then Greece, who's had a good start so far, 3 wins of 3, but we'll see if they can keep that lead at the end. But yeah, it's a big win for Greece going away to Wembley. Emotional win for them too. Greece was playing for something a little bit more, with the passing of their former fullback, who, by the way, they were of George Baldock, who's, by the way, he's British born, George Baldock, and it was reported that the Greece players requested the game to be postponed after the death of George Baldock, but UEFA denied the Greece request. George Baldock, he was 31 years old. He was currently he was mid-season at Panathinaikos. He had 12 appearances for Greece over the past few years. Now he got into the Greece ranks the last 2 years. So a horrible scenario there, and really made this game an emotional game, for the Greek national team, to play for their player. And obviously that probably had an impact in this as well. That sort of thing does have an impact. I was seeing some of the comments after the game. We saw Vangelis Pavlidis, who scored the brace and scored that winning goal. He also had an emotional tribute after the game. He said it was a very special day and match for us. Our thoughts are with George. We are professionals and had to play the match. We gave our soul for him tonight. Today is not a day to talk about football. He was part of our team. We will miss him very much. Also, to a strength, his family, and not talk about football. The whole day was numb. We won tonight and don't want to celebrate. There are just no words. Ivan Jovanovic, who took over for Gus Poyet, who was the manager for Greece, who was the past manager for Greece. Ivan Jovanovic, he was really happy with the team spirit and the inspiration in which they played with in Baldock's memory, saying, "At such moments, football comes second. The time he has with the team, he made his mark, and that was visible in the way the players played today." So obviously for Greece, it was bigger than just another football game. As far as England, they need to, settle this managerial situation as fast as possible. Because, look, you don't have much, you think you have a lot of time, but you don't have much international breaks in between now and the World Cup. The great thing, the privilege that England have, that, me as a U.S. men's national team, I don't have when I'm, rooting for the U.S., is that England have World Cup qualifiers that they can use as preparation, real competitive games. So, but you need to have the manager in there so he can build a cohesion and he can tactically implement and if it is Lee Cardsley, and that is what England want to do, and they want to go with the Spanish national team route, the Luis de la Fuente route, okay, stop having him on limbo, almost having to gamble in these sort of games to really impress and during this tryout. Stop doing all this and just give him the job and let him, let him start building his team ready for the World Cup. If not, if you're looking at an Eddie Howe, if you're looking at a Graham Potter, finalize it. And the sooner the better. You cannot, it doesn't, I don't understand the whole notion of having an interim manager for multiple international windows. This is something you need to address. As soon as Southgate resigns, it's something that you need to be working on immediately. I don't understand these long periods of having an interim manager. It doesn't do no good for the players on the national team. It does no good for the team because there's performances like today that happen. And it does no good for the person who's in the interim role, especially if he is one of those candidates potentially vying for the managerial position. So they need to settle that and start building some continuity heading into these World Cup qualifiers to build the best team that they can build for 2026. Because this is a team, at the end of the day, you have some quality in this team. You do have a Cole Palmer, who's been amazing again this season so far. You have a Phil Foden, who won the Premier League Player of the Year. You got a Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's the best player in the world at his position, arguably. You do have Bukayo Saka, Anthony Gordon, Jude Bellingham, Ollie Watkins. You have a good string of players, and then you have a good experience as well with Harry Kane. Kyle Walker, he's still involved. He was on the bench for today's game. They need to start building the continuity going forward. And whoever is the manager, when the next international break comes for the England national team, which I believe the next international window is in November, mid-November, they need to, the manager who will be taking them to the World Cup needs to be the manager then. Or at least they need to be on the verge of making the hire. They cannot be in the same position they are now in the window in a month, still in limbo, not exactly knowing what direction that they want to go to. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will do a full reaction of today's CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I believe shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits some loose shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
before the break, we reacted to England getting stunned by Greece as they lose at Wembley. We move on to do a full reaction to today's CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers. Some interesting games. Let's go in order with kickoff times. Bolivia, they continue their remarkable, run since the last international window. They find themselves now in their last 3 games. They have gotten 9 points, and they found themselves from sitting with 3 points after their first 6 games to now sitting pretty in sixth place with 12 points. It's been a remarkable, set of run that Bolivia has been on the last 3 games, and they did it. They defeated the likes of Venezuela, a team that reached the quarterfinal, completely wiped them out 4-0 at home. Then they got, they narrowly went away, but they got it done. They beat Chile. And then at home, taking advantage of the altitude, playing the majority of the game with 10 men, their player in the 20th minute getting sent off. They beat a Colombian national team that was on a remarkable run in terms of unbeaten. Yeah, it was snapped in the final against Argentina, but that came in extra time. If you look at it within the 90 minutes, I think Colombia was on a 26 something of that sort, high 20 game unbeaten streak, and they in Bolivia have snapped that despite the fact that they were playing the majority of the game with 10 men. It is a remarkable result, and this is a sort of result that could build some momentum going forward. This is a Bolivian team now being managed by Oscar Villares, who came in after the Copa America, and man, it's been working. And them moving into the smaller stadium, was something that was frowned upon a little bit because La Paz holds, the stadium in La Paz holds about, I believe, 41,000, almost double the amount of seats that the stadium that they now play in holds. I forgot the name of it. The El Alto Stadium in Municipal Stadium in El Alto, Bolivia, which only holds about 22,000, but there's the elevated altitude there. It's about 1,840 meters above La Paz, so it's a really, really suffocating place to play at. And it was also, game was played 3:00 in the heat. Remarkable for Bolivia, and Bolivia now find themselves in 6th place, which is in automatic qualification position if the qualifiers ended today. And it was also a very, very, very technically gifted, superb individual goal from Miguel Terceros that got the winner. Bolivia, they haven't qualified for the World Cup since 1994. That was played in the U.S. We'll see. Can they reach 2026? I'm gonna be keeping an eye on them going forward. I think this is a team, that has some real aspirations. Ecuador drew with Paraguay 0-0, stalemate game played at Kyoto. Ecuador, they did dominate the game, just lacked that little bit of cutting edge, lacked that little bit of quality to get the winner. These are 2 teams in around similar position standings. Ecuador now move up to 5th place with 12 points. Paraguay have 10 and 8 points. It's really tightly congested amongst all those teams. Ecuador had a fair share, the majority of the possession and the majority of shots. But to be honest, the game was pretty tightly contested. both teams lacked that cutting edge, and scoreless was really, really fair. I think Ecuador, it wasn't, I wasn't impressed with Ecuador. I do have to say, I do have some, expectations of Ecuador. I thought they were pretty unimpressive in Copa America for what I expected, especially what we saw from them in the last World Cup. So, but yeah, we move on though. Venezuela, they take on the likes of what is Venezuela? Venezuela took on Argentina, and it was a 1-1 draw. Argentina, Messi was complaining about the soaked field and how it had an impact. Otamendi opened up the scoring in the 13th minute. Rondon goal in the 65th minute. This game played at the Maturin. Argentina, they had the fair share of possession. They had 60% of the chances. But Venezuela was able to create a few opportunities despite the limited possession. And they looked more dangerous in periods with the ball than Argentina looked total with the amount of ball that they have. Messi, he was able to come back. I believe this is Messi's first game for Argentina since the Copa America final, in which he had suffered that ankle injury but they did still win. Emiliano Martinez, he was serving a 2-match suspension because of the behavior he had against Colombia. But Geronimo Rulli, who came in, he made some pretty good saves. Salomon Rondon had some good opportunities here and there. He eventually was able to equalize, and yeah, Argentina, they just couldn't play their game. I definitely think that the field had something to do with it. I think the atmosphere had something to do with it as well. But overall, 1-1, I think it's a fair result. And Venezuela, they're not a bad team. We saw what they were able to do at Copa America. They were a penalty shootout away from reaching that semifinal. So then the last game we have to go with is Brazil beat Chile 2-1. Man, Brazil, they're just surviving at this point. I mean, could you imagine if Luis Enrique didn't get that winner in the 89th minute? Imagine if they finished this game 1-1 against Chile, the bottom feeders of CONMEBOL at this point. Them and Peru, the two, Brazil, they also get to play Peru. Imagine if Brazil did not get this victory. It would, oh my goodness. And it was a lifeless, unimpressive game again. They conceded a goal early, Eduardo Vargas, Eduardo Vargas, he's still involved. And it took, they eventually equalized through Igor Jesus in stoppage time in the first half. And again, Brazil lacked that quality, lacked that cutting edge, lacked that Brazilian spirit. And they got lucky with that late winner from Luis Enrique. But again, Brazil just not good enough. The heroics from Luis Enrique was great, and but shocking. I thought Gabriel defended really, really well. Gabriel and Marquinhos, I thought they defended pretty well for Brazil. I thought generally defensively Brazil didn't give up much clear cutout opportunities besides that opening goal to Vargas. But overall, I mean, absolute shocking. Paquetá, he played in the deeper role. He was horrible. Andre playing next to him was just as bad. Both of them got replaced at halftime. In the attack, I thought Savinho was decent. I thought Igor Jesus was pretty good. Rodrigo didn't really, wasn't at his best, in my opinion. And Rafinha was a shell of the player that we've seen so far at Barcelona. He didn't get involved into the match at all. We didn't see him do what we see him play in Barcelona. And sometimes, get involved in play, come in midfield and receive the ball and be dominant, not just playing off that left-hand side, but also being able to operate in the middle of the pitch. We didn't see that. He didn't get involved, Rafinha. Rodrigo struggled to get involved either. And it didn't work out. Maybe it's time for Rafinha to play on the left-hand side and then occasionally start drifting into the middle like he does for Barcelona. But, yeah, he did not look comfortable. And, yeah, Luis Enrique, he got the winner. And I thought he played really well in the 22 minutes. Because, yeah, it's pretty sad. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty sad where Brazil found themselves in. And Dorviel, disastrous tactics. I mean, you could tell with the way he, the halftime substitutions he made to right his wrong. Yeah, Brazil is, yeah, I don't know what to say. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll do a full reaction to today's UEFA Nations League action.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we discussed some of the CONMEBOL games, World Cup qualifier games. We move on to discuss the Nations League games that happened today, obviously excluding the game we already covered earlier on in today's show, and that was England taking on Greece. But there was some other games that happened. Italy took on Belgium. Italy went up, this game being played in Rome, by the way, at the Stadio Olimpico, home of Roma and Lazio, and it was the host that took a brilliant lead, getting an early goal again in these Nations League. They scored really early on against France. Similar timing here. With Andrea Cambiaso getting a goal 59 seconds into the match. Speaking of Retegui, who plays his home football now at the Stadio Olimpico playing for Lazio, he got the second. He's been having a pretty good year so far for Atalanta. He's maybe now the answer for Italy, in their number 9 position going forward. There was some expectations of him when, Italy was able to recruit him as a dual national, because, he's born and raised in Argentina, but he does have Italian descent, so he is a dual national and he is eligible to play for Argentina. And Italy were able, despite Argentina, the success that they went on winning that World Cup, they were able to recruit him to play for the likes of Italy, and maybe it could be that solution, but that's not where the game ended. Though Lopetegui got the second. Belgium were able to play themselves in the game, in the huge turning point game in the 40th minute. Lorenzo Pellegrini's red card. And I do have to say, before that red card though, Italy were playing some brilliant football and they were wiping Belgium away. And I was very, very impressed with Italy, because so far we've seen of them from post this European Championship, so far the start of the Nations League, they've been really, really good, in my opinion. But when that red card came, as expected, playing up against an opposition like Belgium that does have some quality, it was going to always be difficult playing down a 10-man. And immediately following that red card, Maxime de Cooper got the equalizing goal in the 42nd minute. And then later on in the second half, eventually Trossard, who always makes those impacts in clever ways, poked in a really clever volley from Wout Weiss's header, and that made that game 2-1. So now in that group, Italy right now find themselves, let's discuss the other game in that group, which was France taking on Israel, playing this game obviously without Mbappe. The French national team won 4-1 despite not playing with Mbappe. Now, Israel was the home team in this game, but we know the geopolitical issues going on in that place. So this game was played in Hungary, which always happens to be the neutral sites. You remember during COVID, Champions League, whenever teams couldn't go away to a specific country, like Spain, they couldn't play in England. Spanish teams couldn't play in England. When Atletico Madrid took on Chelsea, they had to play the game. They had to play. Atletico had to play their home game in Budapest. But yeah, France, they got this 4-1 win. Dominated the game. Israel, the only shot they had was the goal with Omri Gendelman. That was their only shot. That was the only shot on target. Camavinga, he was able to get on the score sheet. Nkunku playing in Mbappe's absence as well. And then to close out the game, Gunduzi and Barcola to make it 4-1 for France. And if you look at the standings there, you have Italy top with 7 points after 3. France sitting second with 6. Belgium sitting third with 4. And then Israel is dead last with 0 points from 3 games. And they're gonna really struggle to, get a single point in this group. And that's a difficult group with Italy, France, and Belgium. We will go through some of the that was it for the part 1 games, but we will go through some of the part 2, the other part games. Moldova, they played Andorra, they won 2-0. North Macedonia, 3-0 win over Latvia. Gibraltar and San Marino, the matchup everybody was looking for. Gibraltar got a 1-0 win. How many games can Gibraltar, say they're going into as the favorites? Actually, no, I need to be fair though. Gibraltar is unbeaten in their last 4. They beat Andorra, they beat San Marino, they tied with Liechtenstein, they tied with Wales. So, maybe I shouldn't be too overly critical. You go back, I think it was in the qualifiers, they lost 14-0 to France, I believe. Yeah, it was November 18, 2023 in the World Cup qualifier. But yeah, Gibraltar, they get the win. They get the win today, over San Marino. Ireland to get a 2-1 win over Finland. Obviously, these are the 2 other teams outside of the group of England and Greece. And let's actually look at that's a League B standing. That's a League B group, but let's look at the standings there. Greece find themselves top with 9 points. England was 6, and then Ireland was 3 points, and Finland was none. Finland, let's see if they can be more competitive in that group. Finland actually qualified for the European Championships a few years ago, the one in 2021. So, there's some life there. At least there was. Austria 4-0 win over Kazakhstan. Good bounce back from them from a disappointing international window last time around, where they drew Slovenia and then they lost to Norway. But 4-0 win for Austria after a really good European Championship for them. Believe they reached the quarterfinals, or no, they lost in the 16th to Turkey. Yeah, that was a wild one, that game. Norway defeats Slovenia 3-0. Holland keeps getting on the score sheet. Brace for Norway in the 7th and 62nd minutes. Alexander Sorloth also was able to get a goal. Norway operating with a two-man up front. They're able to get 3 past Jan Oblak, and the Slovenians. Faroe Islands and Armenia finished 2-2. Then, I discussed that Italy's 2-2 draw with Belgium. So, that's all for today's UEFA Nations League action. Tomorrow you have you got Hungary taking on the Netherlands. You got Bosnia and Herzegovina taking on Germany. You got Croatia. No, that's not tomorrow actually. Technically, Hungary and Netherlands, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Germany. Those games are technically today because we're past midnight, but you know what I mean. You also have Estonia taking on Azerbaijan, Ukraine taking on Georgia, Turkey taking on Montenegro, Slovakia taking on Sweden, Iceland taking on Wales, Czechia taking on Albania. So a lot of Nations League games tomorrow to check out. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll react to Graham Souness's scathing criticism of Ange Postecoglou.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, we did a full reaction to today's UEFA Nations League actions. We move on to react to Graham Souness's scathing criticism of Ange Postecoglou. So Souness, he's very critical of Ange Postecoglou. We know Tottenham find themselves in a not a rough period, but not a great start to the season. They're sitting in 9th place right now in Premier League through 7 games. They've won 3 games and lost 3, and they drew 1. Not been that good of a start. It's been a team that lacked that cutting edge, especially earlier on this season. They would dominate games, but just couldn't get the goals, and then teams would come the other way against the run of play and get a goal or take advantage of set piece like Arsenal did against Tottenham. And the results weren't coming early on. Then Tottenham started to build a period of a consistency with piling up, some good wins, getting 3 goals past Man United, 3 goals past Karabakh, 3 goals past Brentford. and getting the goals and having a little bit more cutting edge. But then now this past weekend, they are up 2-0, and they drop a they lose a 2-0 lead, and within the span of 18 minutes, and they go from up 2-0 to down 3-2. And it's that was a bad result on a Tottenham team that was going on a good run, but it sort of shifted the narrative from Postecoglou, who plays amazing football, and the teams play great football, but he has a stubborn way about it. And when the results are great, everybody's going to be, wow, Postecoglou, brilliant manager, blah, blah, blah. But when the results are bad, people are, it's going to be heavy criticism because of his stubbornness. And that's just the good and the bad with it. And Graham Souness, obviously being the emotional journalist he is, obviously when the good is going good, he might get carried away, but when the bad gets bad, he's coming out with comments saying Postecoglou is lucky and naive, and he said it was a madness that he didn't take any of his staff to Tottenham. Let's get the quotes exactly what he said actually. The only time when I think of Ange Postecoglou, I go back to the game against Chelsea where they got 2 players sent off and he still had them playing right up to the halfway line. The only time you can do that is when you've got 11 players on the pitch and the ball is constantly under pressure. The minute someone can get their head up, you're in trouble. They could have conceded 4 or 5 more goals that game. I thought that was naive. It's naive to talk like that and say that the more open the game is, the better it is. If they lost that game 7 or 8 goals to 2, you've lost the players as a manager. He wasn't brave that day. They got lucky. Wow, there's a, and there was some other things that he said I can't find. Oh yeah, he also continued to say, he's walked into Tottenham without bringing any of his own staff. Is he so naive as to think he can trust any of the coaching staff he's inherited not to go to the chairman with their tittle-tattle? I would not take a job and think I can just walk into it. It's madness. You need to go in with people you trust because a manager is lonely. And I do agree with that part. He continued on saying, you'll learn it at school. When you're 2-0 up, the next goal is vital. If you concede, the momentum is suddenly with the opposition. But if you go to 3-0 up, the game is over. I don't know if Spurs have any leaders. When they go into the dressing room at halftime, the chat should be, we can't concede the next goal. The game is far from over. That's what Ange Postecoglou should be telling them. He needed to remind them that if they were to concede, everything's going to be all over you. The issues at Spurs boiled down to the manager and the coaching staff. The only message they needed to give the players in that game when the halftime whistle blew was to play more of the game. Spurs just ended up capitulating, which is why Postecoglou was so deflated after the game. He thought he had some warriors in that team and was proven otherwise. I do have to say, though, there's a lot to unpack there. Let's address each piece bit by bit. The first comments was him discussing the Chelsea game. I still think that was madness, playing halfway to the line with 9 men. When you're playing with 9 men, you have to change it. I mean, that's just, there's a fine line, there's a fine line between being, committed and dedicated to your style of play and your approach to just flat out stubbornness. And there's a good kind of stubbornness and there's a bad kind of stubbornness. And he crossed the fine line with a bad stubbornness, because that is just suicide. What, the approach that they had in that Chelsea game with 9 men in that second half. He's just conceding the game at that point. He's just conceding the game, and maybe it's a part of his, trying to build a long-term, trying to build into their psyche of his style of play. But that was just suicide. And in that game, As a manager, you should be doing everything you can to make the in-game adjustments to give your team the best chance to win. You're not giving your chance the best chance to win when your back four is lined up at the halfway line going up against a team that has 2 more men on the pitch. It's ridiculous. And it made the game usually when games are open, it's fun to watch. It made the game hard to watch because that did not look like football. That looked like a basketball game, that game. I still remember it to this day. It looks like I say to this day, like it was a long time ago. It was only last season. But I still remember it to this day, and it was crazy. So that was his first. The second part, walking into Tottenham without bringing up his staff. Look, this is something obviously as soon as he's a manager, he recognizes the staff, the importance of a staff, and it's something I can't really speak on to a major extent. But I know the staff is important in any sort of coaching role, whether it's NFL and the people you bring in, your assistants, is very, very important. You need to have a cohesion even amongst the staff. And the fact that I don't know if it is actually true, I'm just first hearing it, but if it's true that he walked in there and he didn't bring any of his own staff, for me that's crazy. That is crazy. I do agree that is madness. But again, that's not something I can speak extensively on because of the fact that I've never been a manager. And when he said, and I agree with the 2-0 part, it is a dangerous lead 2-0 because one goal completely changes the momentum of the game. And I do agree when he says, do Spurs have any leaders? No, they don't have any leaders. They don't have any leaders. I think I was talking about this a few days ago, in which how whenever things get rough, going the wrong way, who's the player that, tries to calm it down just for a period to see them out of, dangerous period. Who's that leader? I said this a few days ago myself. I think this was on this past Monday, when I was speaking initially about the Tottenham-Brighton game. They are a team that's lacking leaders. But when he says the issues at Spurs boil down to the manager and the coaching staff, I don't agree with that. Because look, there's been a lot of coaching staffs and a lot of managers that have been managing Tottenham over the last few years, and they've had these same issues, these same mentality issues, the same bottling issues, where they concede leads, where they concede goals, in which they just completely bottle it and they don't show up to the level that they're expected to be at. So to say the issues at Spurs boil down to the manager, no, I don't agree with. Especially when, when the highs are highs for Tottenham, when they were having that great start to the season last season, when they were on their run that they had after that Arsenal game, there was no talk about Postecoglou, he's being the problem, he's this, he's that. But when the bad results start coming again, suddenly he's a problem again. I don't like that emotionally high and low aspect of it. I think people need to just steady down and understand there's huge benefits of a manager like Ange Postecoglou and what he, the product that we see on the field game in, game out. But there's also some negatives in how they can sometimes be open to play against. There's sometimes, he's sometimes stubborn and is not willing to adapt and can put, these Tottenham players in a vulnerable position. So it just needs more objectivity there when it's the reporting of this. Short break here coming up, though. When we come back, we'll react to some of the top soccer headlines. Before the break, we discussed Graham Souness' scathing criticism of Ange Postecoglou. We move on to react to some of the top headlines, and we gotta go to United, where Mazraoui has had a procedure for heart palpitations, and he has undergone a medical procedure, and it was a corrective procedure as a precaution, and it is it was a relatively normal condition, nothing out of the ordinary, but there was no timeline for Mazraoui to return, but there was reports that said United hoped that it should be within a few weeks, but there was no exact timeline exactly when do they expect him to be back, and hopefully everything is well. You don't want to mess with things like heart and all that, heart palpitations. That can be something very, very serious. I know Dempsey, he went through an issue later on in his career, forced him to miss a lot of time. So hopefully Mazraoui, because obviously it's always bigger than football. We knew Sergio Aguero, he had to retire early because of some issues when it came to his heart. So we hope that it's nothing serious, and from the sounds of it, it is nothing. It's simply something. He'll be back really, really soon. So yeah, Zach Steffen, he was speaking after being recalled to the U.S. men's national team, and he said that this is a really proud moment. Steffen said, and this was a big goal of mine to get back into the mix. It feels great to be back. The coaches have confidence in me. They're seeing me. They believe in me. And throwing on the U.S. jersey again, you're working for something bigger than yourself. We know he spiraled out of that squad in 2022 after he was, not only told that he wasn't gonna be obviously he wasn't gonna start at the World Cup, but told he wasn't even gonna be involved in the squad. And yeah, it's good. We'll see what, he hasn't been really that great in MLS, but he is the only goalkeeper we have right now that is okay playing out of the back. Everybody else we have is pretty crap, and at the same time we don't really have any good shot stoppers at this point in time, with Matt Turner and how disappointing he's been recently, the bad form he's been. So if you're looking at it, you really don't really have a good shot stopper. So, if you're Mauricio Pochettino, you're opening the likes of a Steffen to potentially, take back his role. Because, look, if Matt Turner is not going to, be a great shot stopper, then he's really not providing anything. At least with Steffen, where, we can play out at the back a little bit more efficiently. New Zealand, they beat Tahiti 3-0 in the opening World Cup qualifier. Normally, Oceania World Cup news is something I don't really like to get much into, because number one, I don't have much knowledge about it. Number two is, let's be fair, it's the worst confederation in football, and it's disliked by the widest of margins. But there's a little bit more elevated importance now with Oceania World Cup qualifiers going forward, because they now have a guaranteed spot at the World Cup with the new 48-team World Cup. They have 1.5 spots now, which means one team from Oceania will be guaranteed into the World Cup, and then the other spot is inter-confederation playoff to get in. Usually Oceania only had half a game, but now with 1.5. Yeah, it'll be good to see New Zealand taking on because let's be fair, it's gonna be New Zealand at every single World Cup now going forward, and with their victory now they had over Tahiti in Group B 3-0. Let's just be for real, we're gonna see New Zealand at the World Cup. They're going to be at every single World Cup now going forward, because they're they're not just the class of Oceania. They're the only team that has any, quality in Oceania, if you consider that quality yourself. I don't want to be, oh my God, I'm gonna get hate mail from any, Oceania fans, fans of Oceania football. But yeah. Gareth Southgate, he dismissed speculation that he will be the replacement for Erik ten Hag. Southgate said, "I won't coach in the next year for sure. I'm certain of that." He said this to a BBC reporter. He said, "I need to give myself time to make a good decision. When you come out of a really big role, you need to give your body time. You need to give your mind time." I already spoke yesterday about Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp becoming head of global soccer at Red Bull. Apart from that, not really, not much big news coming out in the soccer world. We know the U.S. taking on Saturday. They're going to be taking on Panama. We're looking forward to that. That will be Mauricio Pochettino opening game. Mexico and Valencia. Mexico taking on Valencia in a friendly also coming up, and it's something that's been both sides have been critical about. Mexico fans not really packing the stadium at Puebla because they're not why are they playing a club team? And Valencia fans are really frustrated with this team that's had a really poor start in La Liga, find themselves currently finishing 17th or 18th, now traveling a game halfway across the globe against Mexico to take on a team for friendly whenever you're supposed to be resting, preparing for your next game coming up. I'm never a fan of these international games taking on club teams. Never a fan of that, but yeah, let's see if any of the teams gets anything going forward. It's hard for the teams that hosting the World Cup to get good quality friendlies right now because a lot of teams in Europe they're playing Nations League, in Asia, South America they're playing World Cup qualifiers, in Africa they're playing AFCON qualifiers. Everywhere they have competitive games that they're having to play, while the Mexico, US, and Canada are scrapping to find any national teams to play in friendlies. I believe Canada only have one friendly in this window, and that's against Panama. The U.S. are playing Panama and Mexico, and then Mexico are taking on the U.S. and then a club team. It shows the difficulties to get good quality friendlies. I believe in the next international window, the U.S. will be. The next international window, Nations League will start. The CONCACAF Nations League will start. So there'll be, it'll be competitive games for they're not the home teams to prepare for, the home World Cup teams to prepare for. Can't speak today, but it's not quality. It's not quality games because, especially earlier on in the Nations League, you're going to be taking on some teams that are not at the level of the teams that they will be facing at the World Cup. Julian Nagelsmann said the growing number of matches will require longer breaks in between competitions, with the expanded Champions League, the new Club World Cup, and the national team competitions being enlarged, and specifically the World Cup turning into 48 teams. Nagelsmann said himself at a press conference, "I have often said that I won't complain about the calendar. A lot of matches are financing the sport. You have to have a healthy balance. I don't think there will be fewer games in the future. There'll be more matches, and we should be talking about how to structure the breaks between competitions." Nagelsmann, he made a comparison like the NBA basketball, like NBA and NFL that have months-long breaks between the seasons, an off season, to allow for rest. He said NBA players play 85 games or so, but they have a long break. The NFL has a long break. We don't have that in football. The players just don't get any break. So yeah, interesting comments there from Nagelsmann. Now, an NBA, NFL type break for soccer, man, that'd be really, really hard to take in, because that's a lot of time with no soccer. I'm not used to that as a footballing fan. But there definitely needs to be a little bit more break, because if you're looking at it, if you're playing a club season, then you have a World Cup, and then you're going back to club season, you're realistically getting, 3-4 weeks off in total? If that, probably even less. So, yeah. But guys, thank you guys for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates.